But the thing is, we would like to get to that point out of the hole to moving around or finding a different path sooner than later. And that's not necessarily easy to do when we become so stubborn that we can see a problem and do nothing about it. From New Life Ministries, this is Going Deeper with Stephen Arterburn. I'm Stephen Arterburn. And Going Deeper is all about taking the tough issues, the hard issues of life, looking a little bit deeper inside so that we can gain some insight into our lives. Hi there, Steve Arterburn here. Thanks for joining me for Going Deeper. We are smack dab in the middle of a series on the problems with love. And I love it that you're watching or listening. Hopefully, you think you might have a problem in love and want to solve it. That would be such a great thing, which would be exactly the opposite of what we're talking about today. In our first of the series, our first problem, we talked about that there is no problem. Well, until you create one, because that's what you're used to. In the second one, we talked about, well, there's a problem, but you just don't see it. You're blind to it. Well, today we're talking about the problem being that you see the problem and you choose to do nothing about it. Imagine this. I heard this little story about a young woman falls into a hole on the sidewalk on her way to school. And when she ends up at the bottom of this hole, she feels hopeless. She feels helpless. She doesn't know what to do. She scurries around. And then, finally, she makes her way, climbing out and getting on with getting to work. Well, the next day, she forgets that right at that place, there is a big hole in the sidewalk. Can you imagine? And she falls right in again. And she starts to think, wait, I've done this before. This seems familiar. And then she starts to figure out how to get out of the hole and makes her way. Well, the third time, next day, there's the hole. And she walks to the hole and jumps in. She says, this hole has become part of my life. And so I'm just going to jump on in and then quickly get out and get on to work. And then one day she decides maybe I could walk around this hole. I think that's a pretty good result. And then another day she realizes I don't even have to go this way. I can take a totally different path where there are no holes. And then finally, to protect others, I'm going to put a big old sign. Hole, look out. So you see, it's a simple story. You might say a stupid story. But it does illustrate what a lot of us do. We repeat our mistakes, we get used to them, and then we start, hopefully, to make our way a different way, and maybe even help others. But the thing is, we would like to get to that point out of the hole to moving around or finding a different path sooner than later. And that's not necessarily easy to do when we become so stubborn that we can see a problem and do nothing about it. Want to know what God thinks about that? Let me read you an old story from the Old Testament. This is about Eli. And Eli had two sons, and they were priests, and they weren't very good at the priesthood. Listen to this. 1 Samuel 2, 22 through 25. Now Eli was very old, but he was aware of what his sons were doing to the people of Israel. So he saw the problem, see? He knew, for instance, that his sons were seducing the young women who assisted at the entrance of the tabernacle. Eli said to them, I've been hearing reports from all the people about the wicked things that you're doing. Why do you keep sinning? You must stop, my sons. The reports I hear among the Lord's people are not good. If someone sins against another person, God can mediate for the guilty party. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede? But Eli's sons wouldn't listen to their father, for the Lord was already planning to put them to death. As the story winds up, you see, Eli talked to them. Talk is really cheap. They were priests in the tabernacle. He should have removed them. He should have taken their robes and whatever else they wore and demoted them. But he did nothing but talk. As a result, the boys were killed, and old Eli falls back and breaks his neck. And dies. So if you think that God likes people that, let's say, keep the peace, well, you're wrong. He doesn't honor the peacekeeper. He only honors the peacemaker. So I want to be sure that you're doing something about the problem that you see within yourself. And if you don't see it, then you find somebody to help you see it, and then you go from unwilling to willing to deal with it. You know, I might be willing to deal with my problem all the time. I might be so obsessed with myself, that's all I talk about is my problem. When I worked with alcoholics, they back in the 70s, sometimes when their spiritual recovery wasn't in place, they'd kind of get stuck. And all they would do is talk about the drinking days and the days in the past and the war, things like that. And pretty soon they were right back where they were. What we need to do is be able to move on. And we're never going to do that talking about ourselves all the time, obsessing over ourselves, but doing nothing about the problem. Well, I'm not going to tell you where I'm going to go with this. I want to tell you a story first. It's a story that Tim Hansel told. Tim tells the story of a professor, a preaching professor, who taught his students how to preach an amazing story on the Good Samaritan. The professor then gave each groups of 10 guys an assignment. On different days, he gave one group an hour to go to this other place, present their sermon, and come back. Another group, he gave them 2 hours to complete the assignment. And another group, 3 hours to complete the assignment. Well, here's what he had done. He had set up along the way a man who looked like he was homeless with a little cup there begging. And the sign that he had said, "I'm hungry." And so you can imagine what happened. When all of these people in the first group that only had an hour and they were really rushed right by the guy beside the road on their way to preach a sermon on the Good Samaritan. The second group had a couple of people that stopped. They had a little more time. And the third group, more of them stopped and actually tried to help this old guy on their way to preaching the sermon on the Good Samaritan. What's the point? Sometimes we are so rushed and so busy. We see things, we glance at things, problems we could help with, but we choose to do nothing. I hope and pray that you're never, ever in that category. So, if there's a problem and you're doing nothing about it, it's not pleasing to God. You could break your neck over it. And if you see other people with a problem, God wants you to step in and do something. In fact, he even says this. Jesus said, when you do it to one of the least of these folks, you are literally doing it to me. So maybe today'd be a great day. Look at yourself, see what you're unwilling to do, try to find why you're not willing to work on it, and go to work. Maybe get some help to go to work. But also, maybe it's a great day to go out and help somebody else, to find Jesus in the helplessness and the hopelessness of another person and minister to them. And it's just the same as if you're ministering to Jesus. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, I'll see you on Going Deeper, and we'll do it again with our number 4 in the 5 problems with love. Thank you for joining me for Going Deeper. I hope something I've said may have helped just a little bit. If you have a question you'd like me to answer or comment, just email me at stevesocial@newlife.com. I'll see you next time.
If you want to support Going Deeper with Stephen Arterburn, be sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. And if you know someone who would benefit from this episode, be sure to share it with them. See you on the next Going Deeper with Stephen Arterburn from New Life Ministries.